Poke People! So I'm sure we've all heard by now of Twitch Plays Pokemon, right? Well, did you know that a little while back, a couple of years ago, Mr. Jacob Alpharad on YouTube did his own Twitch Plays Pokemon in Pokemon Crystal. During that time, his chat caught, I believe it was a level 3 Hoppip, which they named Babu and proceeded to worship as the second coming of Bird Jesus. Now, the most interesting part of this, at least to me, is that his chat insisted on not using any attacking moves with Babu. In fact, when they got to the Elite Four, they straight up told Alpharad, "Do not teach Babu any attacking moves. She is a pacifist." So they beat Lance, by the way. But that got me wondering, could Babu have done this alone? Well, there's only one way to find out. So I booted up a copy of Pokemon Crystal and achieved Chibi form, and then proceeded to make my way to Professor Elm's lab, where we met up with Babu. And I quickly noticed a small problem, which is that at level 5, Hoppip only knows Splash, Tail Whip, and Synthesis. So now you're probably wondering, how are we going to win anything without dealing damage? Or even having a move that kind of does damage? And the answer is struggle. So Hoppip doesn't actually learn Synthesis or Tail Whip until level 5. So all the wild Hoppip in this area only have Splash. So we can take advantage of that and PP stall their Splash until they begin to use Struggle, and use that to level up. We're not dealing damage to them, they're dealing damage to themselves. Babu is trying to teach them about peace, but they insist on being violent towards Babu, which means they're fainting themselves. Anyway, we can finally move on to Mr. Pokemon's house, and he gives us his grand discovery that we were sent there to get from him, and it's an egg. Yeah, he got all excited and we went to get an egg. So on the way out of Mr. Pokemon's house, Elm calls to inform us that he needs our help, but doesn't exactly say what with. Alright. Well, on our way back to Elm's lab, we run into this red-headed gentleman who insists on challenging us to a battle, which we're kind of forced to accept. However, remember, Babu is a pacifist and will not be attacking. That means any move that has base damage associated with, we're not going to use. So instead, we click Poison Powder. So Cyndaquil eventually ends up getting poisoned, and he hits us with Leer. But it's fine. So Cyndaquil proceeds to attack us, intent on damaging poor Babu. However, despite his best efforts, peace will win out. And his violent ways do not deter Babu from the mission of spreading peace and kindness and joy. So we show this young man the error of his ways, although he's not quite ready to accept that lesson. Not yet. So we get back to Professor Elm's lab and find out that the Cyndaquil that the young aggressive man fought us with was stolen from this lab. The police officer on the scene asked us if we happen to know the name of the thief, which, yeah, we do. He told us. Kind of an odd thing for a thief to do. That seems counterintuitive. His name is Agro. So, with all of that being done, it's time to go face the first gym leader, Falconer. Falconer's bird Pokemon gave us quite a lot of trouble. Babu's a grass type, so flying type moves are super effective, and also Falconer's Pokemon are kind of strong. But, eventually we are able to calm the Pidgey down, although it took a little convincing. He really wanted to fight Babu, but Babu just would not give in, would not fight. And eventually the Pidgey accepted that. And so Falconer sent out his Pidgeotto instead, hoping to convince Babu to use violence against him. This did not work. Between the poison powder and Babu's ability to heal using synthesis, not even the super effective gusts that the Pidgeotto were sending towards Babu were able to defeat her. And in the end, Pidgeotto only succeeded in hurting himself. Babu was undeterred. And as a reward, we were given the Zephyr Badge. So now it's time to go and spread Babu's message of peace to the rest of the Johto region. However, before we get to the second gym, we meet up with Kurt, who decides, for whatever reason, that it's a good idea to rush off to the Slowpoke Well to fight Team Rocket. We follow him over there, but it appears that he jumped down instead of taking the ladder and ended up hurting his back. So we have to clear out Team Rocket ourselves. Now they use primarily poison-type Pokemon, which are immune to poison powder. Luckily at this point we have Leech Seed, which allows us to still be able to deal with them without dealing any direct damage, along with getting some healing on Babu, which is always appreciated. So about the time we finish cleaning up the Team Rocket mess, Kurt's back is miraculously good enough for him to walk, so he leads us back up out of the well, and we can go deal with Bugsy. With Team Rocket kicked out of the Slowpoke well, we make our way over to the gym and convince the gym trainers to calm down just a little bit. Now, two of Bugsy's Pokemon are incredibly easy for us to deal with, those being Metapod and Kakuna. Metapod is the easier of the two since we can use both Poison Powder and Leech Seed, and its only moves are Tackle and Harden. And String Shot. Which is fine, we don't need to be fast. We just need to be persistent and non-violent, which we are. Remember, neither Poison Powder nor Leech Seed have base damage associated with them, so it does not count as dealing direct damage. The Kakuna, however, is a slightly different story. Kakuna has Poison Sting, which can poison the target, which means Babu will be taking damage every turn from the poison. Now that's a good strategy for us. We like doing that to our opponents. We don't like that being done back. Still, the Kakuna goes down without too much difficulty. I say too much because up next is Scyther. And not only are we poisoned from the battle with Kakuna, Scyther has Fury Cutter. If you somehow don't know, Fury Cutter becomes more powerful with each successive hit. Now that's balanced out by it having 90 accuracy. I'm pretty sure it's 90. But that still means that even though it can miss 10% of the time, the other 90% it's going to hit and grow more powerful each time. But despite the disadvantage we find ourselves in, Scyther soon enough gives in to Babu's peaceful ways, encouraging Bugsy to hand us the Hive Badge and accept our friendship instead of fighting. So now we can continue on our journey, right? Well, yes and no. Not long after getting the Hive Badge, Agro approaches us again, demanding that we give him another battle. Well, we do our best to convince him that this is not the way things are meant to be. He opens up with Ghastly, a poison type. Well, luckily at this level, he doesn't have anything that we need to be too worried about. He does have Lick, which can paralyze, but we have a berry for that, it's fine. He's also still susceptible to Leech Seed, even though it would be nice to have Poison Powder work. But overall, Ghastly this time around is not too much of a problem. We can handle it. He goes down after not too long and not a whole lot of trouble. The Quilava, on the other hand, is a little more resistant to accepting peace. Now, he can and does get poisoned, and Leech Seed, of course, is going to carry us throughout this whole journey. Now, Quilava does have Smoke Screen, which is a bit annoying since neither Leech Seed nor Poison Powder are 100 accurate anyway. But it doesn't cause all that many problems, and Quilava does sooner or later accept, at least for now, Babu's peaceful ways. Although it does take a little bit of convincing. But converting Quilava to our philosophy only encourages aggro to send out Zubat, another poison type. Now, the smoke screens that we've been hit with do cause Leech Seed to miss, at least initially, more than once. But after a while, we are able to get Zubat to accept Babu's peaceful ways, which just causes the young red-headed aggro to go off on a rant about strength and weakness and Team Rocket before storming off to, I guess, convince his Pokemon to become violent and aggressive again. But we'll get him to come around, eventually. I'm not too worried about that. This cannot last forever. Sooner or later, he'll have to calm down. But on our own way through the forest, trying to get to the next gym, we end up having to lead a Farfetch'd back to its trainer, which is kind of weird. I have no idea why we have to do this, but okay. Anyway, with that being done, we are able to move on to convince Whitney to change her ways. She opens up with Clefairy, who loves to spam Metronome, a move that can call any other move in the game and did cause more than one problem. This time around, it calls Baton Pass, which just passes on the Leech Seed to Miltank. Now, this Miltank has a reputation for being very difficult to defeat, but Babu is unfazed and brings Miltank around to her non-violent ways, which then just brings the Clefairy back out. And it ends up not doing very much before accepting Babu's message of peace. It does take a little bit of convincing, but it doesn't put up that much of a fight. Whitney does not take this loss very well and throws a tantrum, but gives us the plain badge anyway when we ask her directly about it. Now, as we're going to the next gym, we decide to take a break and check out the local dance theater, where we're challenged by this group of Asian ladies using cat, rabbit, dog, fox things to fight people with. So we take the time out of our day to teach them about the ways of peace. Despite their best efforts, none of them are able to come up with a persuasive argument against Babu's message. So, using our peaceful tactics, we convinced them to abandon their violence and focus more on spreading peace and joy to their customers rather than this violent fighting that they've been doing. None of them are truly able to convince Babu that their ways are in fact correct, and as a result, Babu is undeterred. So we continue our journey through the land of Johto, spreading peace and not fighting. So we reach Ekrutik next, and as we explore the tower in there, who do you think we run into? Agra, of course. He challenges us yet again, stating that they can't find the legendary Pokemon that are supposed to be here, and it's somehow our fault? Yeah, sure, whatever. Now, unfortunately for us, at this point, Haunter knows Curse, and is willing to use it. So, we have our work cut out for us. We do bring Haunter around after a few turns. But that then brings out the Quilava, and we're cursed. So how do we break this? We send out our HM friend to shake off the curse. Now, does this mean that Babu has already failed to do this alone? Yeah, probably it probably does. Anyway, the HM friend is unfortunately knocked out, and Babu returns to seed and poison Quilava, and show that it is possible to resolve these conflicts without any damaging moves, without directly causing harm to anyone else. Is this easy? No, it is not. The Quilava is throwing fire at us, and it hurts a little bit. But Babu is determined to not cause direct harm to anyone else, including this Quilava. And this Quilava eventually relents and accepts Babu's message. And with Quilava down, Agro sends out Magnemite, a steel type, which is immune to poison. But we're still able to seed it, which we do, and eventually Magnemite gives up. Does it give up without a fight? No, it does not. But the main thing is it does give up. Which leaves Zubat, which is a poison type, which is immune to poison, but can still be seeded. That's what really matters here. And because it can be seeded, we are eventually able to convince the Zubat to submit. All while doing no direct damage. So after Agro's team accepts Babu's message of peace, he continues to act like a snob and talk about strength and weakness. And then, for some reason, a hole opens up in the floor beneath us, and he again acts like it's our fault and we fell through it on purpose. I have no idea what the deal is there. But while we're down there, a bunch of dogs just decided to wake up and run around, and this one in particular took a weird amount of interest in us. I'm confused. What's happening? And since when was it possible to jump up the ledges? Anyway, it's time to deal with Morty. Now, there's two problems with Morty in this kind of challenge. Number one, his Pokemon are all poison type. Number two, multiple of his Pokemon know Curse. So yeah, Babu needs help here. Our HM friend gets sent in to deal with one curse and ends up going down, and Babu comes back in. Ghastly gives up, and Morty sends in Haunter, who also knows Curse and uses it. So we send in another friend that we've encouraged to help Babu in this message. It also goes down and Babu shows Haunter why what it's doing is wrong, and Haunter relents. And so Morty sends out Gengar, who uses Mean Look, trapping Babu on the field with him. Fortunately, this Gengar does not have Curse, and Babu is able to convert him over to the ways of pacifism, which leaves Morty with one more Pokemon. Another Haunter. This one, thankfully, does not have Curse. And so, Leech Seed and Synthesis are enough to teach this Haunter about the true power that peace holds. And this convinces, finally, Morty to give us the Fog Badge. So with Morty's gym done, we can go climb a lighthouse to speak with Jasmine, the leader of the next gym, who sends us off to Cianwood to pick up some medicine for Amphi. Anyway, while we're in Cianwood, we decide that it seems like a good idea to speak with Chuck, who tries to intimidate us by throwing a rock. But this is about our Pokemon, not him, so the display isn't actually all that intimidating. After that, Primeape is quickly seed poisoned and goes down only a few turns later, leaving Poliwrath. Yeah, for some reason, Chuck has fewer Pokemon than the previous gym leader. I don't get it either. Poliwrath, like Primeape, goes down to seed poison, and Chuck is forced then to hand us the Storm Badge. So as we leave Chuck's gym, a woman notices that we have his badge and hands us the HM for Fly, making it so much easier to get back to the lighthouse and give Jasmine the medicine for Amphi. And now that Jasmine is able to focus on doing her job, we can go over to her gym and convince her that her job is not good. Oh, yeah, by the way, she's a steel specialist. So we leech seed the magnemite and eventually it relents, which brings out Steelix, which is a little more stubborn than the magnemite and a lot harder to convince to come over to our side. Still, it recognizes the wisdom that Babu is offering after a while, and we have to deal with a second magnemite. However, sooner or later, that magnemite too bows before Babu, causing Jasmine to give us the mineral badge. Well, before we make it to the next gym, we come across a red Gyarados, which we decide to catch and name Surf. For reasons that it seems like it would be really cool to have a red Gyarados that we can surf around on. That was the extent of that thinking. Well, after that, we find Lance standing around staring at a sign, and he invites us to come along to somewhere in Mahogany Town, which is where we were heading anyway, so we go ahead and follow him. So we go down to the local corner store, and Lance just casually hyper beams the cashier and then busts a hole in the floor to start beating up all the workers there. So we need to clean this mess up, so we go through and calm down the understandably agitated gas station employees that Lance has gotten riled up. As we're going through, we come across an executive who uses a team full of poison types, which are just so challenging for us to deal with for a number of different reasons. Save for one random Eradicate that he has for some reason. And it makes our job just that much easier, so I'll accept it. Well, after we calm him down, the executive runs off, and then his pet Corvid tells us the password to a top secret room in the building. So, of course, we make our way back to the top secret area and walk in like we own the place, only to be stopped by another executive. So, we need to clear this up, and she has a glue. Poison grass type, which is immune to both poison powder and leech seed. And our only option here is to PP stall it until it takes itself out with struggle, which is a lot easier said than done. And this is as far as we make it without using items in battle. In order to get through this, we need to use an ether to avoid struggling ourselves and therefore dealing direct damage to the glue. We eventually do win this, by the way. It just takes a while. And once we do, we shut down the electrode-powered machine, which was Lance's entire purpose in doing all of this. So, mission accomplished, I guess. But our next obstacle is Price, and his Pokemon have Rest. Oh, and their ice types, which are quite super effective against Babu. So I decided to cheat just a little bit and max out the PP of all of Babu's moves. And after doing that, Seal, Dugong, and then Piloswine all go down eventually. And Christ awards us for cheating with the Glacier Badge. Now, as we are leaving Price's gym, Elm calls us to say something about Team Rocket being in the radio tower. So, of course, we head over there to deal with the problem instead of forwarding that information to the police. And after struggling our way up to the top floor, we eventually rescued the director. Or not. The rocket executive impersonating the director has a team full of coughing and wheezing, which is annoying for a lot of reasons. But eventually he submits to us and tells us where to find the real director, which we have to go do ourselves instead of forwarding this information to someone whose job it is to do it. Anyway, as we're on our way to do that, Aggro comes up and challenges us again. So we have to calm him down again. I mean, we get through the Golbat fairly easily, but Haunter still has Curse. But eventually we pull through that and send Aggro back on his way, defeated by Babu the Pacifist. And then we find a Rocket Grunt with another Gloom. So we had a fun time of PP stalling the Gloom until it took itself out, and with the help of an elixir, we're eventually able to deal with this. Okay, maybe we had to use more than one, but, you know, it all worked out in the end. We showed the Gloom that we don't have to attack to be persuasive. And we do get to the real director, who gives us a card key and tells us to go to his office, because he thinks that the big boss of Team Rocket might be there. So instead of forwarding this information to someone whose job it is to deal with this, we go do it ourselves. So we battle through yet more Team Rocket grunts and get to yet another executive. And we see poison his team of Houndour, Coughing, and Houndoom. And in so doing, not only teach this Team Rocket executive how powerful peace and conversation can be, but end the Team Rocket takeover of the radio tower. Because that makes sense. Anyway, with that out of the way, we can finally go on to the final badge of the Johto region. After getting through an ice cave, which I totally knew the exact right route to get through and did not get lost even once. And yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing here. Anyway, I eventually made it to Claire. Claire's team consists of 3 Dragonair and a Kingdra, all of whom succumb relatively easily to Babu's peaceful charm. It did not take much to convince the first Dragonair, and followed by the second, that fighting is not necessarily the way to go. And the Kingdra relented relatively easily to our message. Claire did not take kindly to that and refuses to give us the badge. So we have to go do some stupid challenge of entering a cave and passing some silly quiz. Yeah, we even get jumped by some random guy as we enter the cave. Like, for no real reason, by the way. But we calm him down without too much difficulty. And eventually we find the guy that we were sent in to find. And he basically tells us that Claire is a spoiled brat, which we've already figured out by now. So we answer all of his questions correctly, and Claire still won't give us the badge. But then the guy threatens to tell Lance all about this, and we receive the Rising Badge from Claire. Why didn't you just give us that in the first place? So with all 8 Johto badges in hand, we can take on the Victory Road. At which point Aggro comes at us one final time. He opens up with his Sneasel, who, after some convincing, goes down before too long. But then that's followed up with Golbat, who is a little more annoying, but does eventually accept defeat at the hands of Babu the Pacifist. That brings up Typhlosion, who takes a while, but does relent to Babu, only to then be replaced with Magneton. Magneton, being a Steel type, is challenging, but it's nothing that Babu can't handle. Agro's next Pokemon in line is Haunter. You know, Haunter, the one that uses Curse. Yeah. So we're going to have to do some switching to break that curse. We are not having a good time with that. So I send in our old HM friend, and then misclick, which means Pidgey is on the field when Haunter faints, which is my bad. That's not supposed to happen, but oh well. Kadabra comes in and takes an embarrassingly long time to delete the level 15 Pidgey, but Babu's back in. And after an annoying amount of time caused by Abro insisting on using Recover, Aggro is forced to accept Babu's ideals of peace and non-violence. Which means it's time for the Elite Four. Up first for the Elite Four is Will. Will's first Pokemon is Xatu, which quickly gets seed poison, and as a result relents to Babu fairly quickly. Jinx was a bit of a problem because its stab ice moves are 4 times effective, But even she can't hold out against Babu forever, and soon enough concedes defeat. Which causes a second Zatu to come out to attempt to avenge the first, I guess, but it does just as well as the first. And before too long ends up going down in much the same manner. Executor is immune to Leech Seed because grass type, but it still relinquishes the battle to the non-violent Babu. That just leaves one Pokemon for Will, which is Slowbro. Which is kind of hard to bring around, you know, Slowbro is famously slow. But it soon enough yields to Babu's peaceful ways. And that's the first member of the Elite Four dealt with. The second member of the Elite Four is Koga, which was a tiny bit of an issue because his poison types are, of course, immune to poison powder. But we can still hit Ariados with Leech Seed. However, before it fully concedes to Babu, Ariados Baton passes that Leech Seed to Muck. It's close a few times, but in the end, Babu is able to appease the Muck, so we're on to Crobat. Which was a bit of an issue. We had to dodge Toxic Poison a few times, but Babu was up to the task. Which brings out Venomoth. And Leech Seed turns out to be all we need in order to make the Venomoth give in. A Fortress does have Protect, but that's not enough on its own to win this battle. It tries to finish Babu's mission by exploding itself, but Babu is able to pull through. So now we're back to the Ariados, where we started. Ariados tries, but soon enough ends up surrendering to Babu. Which means we are now halfway through the Elite Four. Not even the Path of the Ninja is immune to Babu's peaceful ways. Elite Four number 3 is Bruno. Bruno's team of fighting types are all susceptible to both Leech Seed and Poison. So it's nowhere near as difficult as Koga was. Hitmontop gets Seed poisoned and soon enough surrenders. And even though Onix's Sandstorm weakens Babu's synthesis abilities, I don't foresee any difficulties. Hitmonchan, despite having Ice Punch, was not able to stand up to Babu. So, why would an Onix and a Sandstorm be able to do anything? And we're able to come out on top, and even though it's close a couple of times, Babu's just too strong, too persistent, and her will alone is able to convince even these fighting type Pokemon that fighting is not always the correct answer. And her compassion and intellect are able to calm them down. Try as they might, They just can't stand up to Babu. She refuses to use force. And so we're on to Karen. Karen's specialty is dark types. That checks out. Despite this, Umbreon caves without too much difficulty. But then we encounter a problem. That problem is Houndoom. Its flamethrower does a lot. But even so, Babu will not succumb to violence. And we're able to convince the Houndoom to bow to Babu. But after we do that, Vileplume? Vileplume isn't a dark type. Anyway, between Vileplume's self-inflicted confusion from spamming Petal Dance and eventually the struggle recoil, Vileplume is able to see that fighting Babu is pointless. And if fighting Babu is pointless, then maybe fighting in general is pointless. And so, Vileplume yields to Babu. But then it's replaced by Gengar, another non-dark type. Either way, in the end, Gengar goes down and relents to Babu's will and message, only to then be replaced by Murkrow. So, of the dark type specialists, 5 Pokemon, 3 of them are dark type. Interesting. Regardless, we deal with the Murkrow just like we've been dealing with everything else, through non-violent means. And as a result, we are on to the champion. This is the final obstacle of bringing peace to all of Johto. Birdkeeper Lance. His lead Pokemon is a Gyarados. So just a normal blue one, not even a cool red one. And he gets seed poison, but not before setting up rain. However, that rain is of little help and he quickly goes down, bringing out the first of 3 Dragonites. Despite doing its best, Dragonite just can't compete with Babu. Babu's peaceful ways are too strong, and he goes down, bringing out an Aerodactyl, who tries to provoke Babu to violence by throwing rocks, but folds soon enough. Charizard's firepower was tough to endure, but Babu persevered and eventually got through, leaving the last 2 Dragonites, both of which eventually will acquiesce to Babu without too much difficulty. They try as they might. They cannot provoke Babu to violence. They cannot make her yield to their violent tendencies. Babu's will and reason and intellect are just too powerful. And they are what grant Babu the title of Johto Champion, without dealing a single point of direct damage. And when we arrive back home, Elm calls us, so we decide to walk the 15 feet over to his lab where he gives us a reward. A ticket to get on a boat. So we accept and we decide we're going to take a trip over to Kanto because why not? As soon as we enter the boat, we're immediately asked to find this guy's granddaughter, so we agree to help him out without doing any form of verification to confirm that they're actually related, like any responsible person would. While searching for the girl, we're asked to find another missing person who we locate fairly quickly, but he decides to challenge us to a battle. Which, of course, we win fairly easily. And now he's on to do his actual job. And we're allowed to continue searching for the missing girl, who ends up being in the captain's cabin. Nothing strange about that whatsoever. But regardless, we find her and take her to the guy who claims to be her grandfather, as any reasonable person would. And after we do that, he awards us with a metal coat just in time for the boat to arrive in the Kanto region. So, while we're in the Kanto region, we may as well collect the Kanto gym badges. Up first is Surge, and I totally knew that his doors were open and doing the puzzle was completely unnecessary. So I definitely went straight for him and didn't waste any time looking in the trash cans. Now, as for Surge himself, it was just more of the same thing that we've been doing. Leech seed, poison powder, and his Pokemon relented to Babu without any level of difficulty, although there were more of them than there usually are. And, we had to dip into our bag to survive a few hits, but overall, like I said, not much in the way of difficulty. Especially not when two of them blew themselves up, because that's always a good strategy. Regardless, we get the Thunder Badge. So the second gym badge from Kanto that we decide to get is Sabrina, who for some reason has 3 Pokemon when Surge had 5. Also in red, blue, and green she had 4. Regardless, she's just as easy as she ever is, even though the Kadabra does try to stall using Recover, it just doesn't work. Babu's ways are just too convincing, and we get the Marsh Badge. Yeah, Sabrina's just an easy gym to beat. However, up next is Erica. And as I'm sure you're all aware by now, Erica's grass types are immune to Leech Seed. So we have to rely entirely on Poison Powder. But that doesn't mean that this is difficult. In fact, the only difficulty was from Victory Bell, who is immune not only to Leech Seed but also Poison. Still, it takes itself out relatively quickly. But Blossom loses its Poison typing, which every other member of its family has, so there's no further difficulty winning this match. after the victory bell takes itself out with recoil damage. So we get the rainbow badge. Now, the next gym has the opposite problem. Janine specializes in poison types, just like Koga. So we have to rely entirely on Leech Seed, which is slightly better since Leech Seed gives us healing, whereas poison doesn't. But regardless, she throws Crobat and Weezing and what's possibly Sabrina's lost Venomoth at us. But through it all, Babu holds strong and refuses to deal any direct damage, even though Weezing is kind of rude. But something important does happen as a result of this particular battle. And no, it's not Janine having the same ace Pokemon as Koga in this game. It's Janine giving us the same TM that Koga normally does. That being Toxic, which is so much better than Poison Powder, and we teach this move almost immediately. I mean, first we get out of the gym and heal at the Pokemon Center, but then we teach Toxic over Poison Powder. Now, the reason this is good is because Toxic's damage doubles every turn. Now, in addition to the additional 15% accuracy, that's very nice. Anyway, before we can get to Cerulean's gym, we have to do this little mini story of finding a machine part for this guy at the power plant, which turns out it was stolen by this Team Rocket grunt, who apparently not only isn't aware that Team Rocket disbanded, but doesn't speak English as his first language. No judgment, just an observation. I'm sure I sound just as bad trying to speak Spanish. Anyway, he challenges us to a battle, but he only has one Golbat, so of course he loses. So he tells us where to find the machine part, and we go get it. Turns out it's hidden in the gym, which we could have just gotten that. So we take it back over to the power plant, and now that we've done that, we have to go interrupt Misty on her date. Which we do just by setting foot on the cave. Seriously, we weren't even anywhere close to where she was. But, moving on. Now, the battle itself actually wasn't all that bad. A few of her Pokemon have fairly powerful ice moves, which of course did a lot of damage, but not enough to even threaten a loss for Babu. Lapras sets up the rain, which we can synthesis, but then it misses Blizzard after Blizzard, so Babu's fine. Starmie has Ice Beam, which is a lot more accurate, but Babu's able to deal with it and claim victory over Starmie. This is where Toxic really helps over Poison Powder. Quagsire, I'm not sure what to say about Quagsire. It did not put up all that much of a fight. It kept trying to use Surf, which did nothing. And we got the Cascade badge now. Now, we tried to go straight to Pewter City, but it turns out that we need to go back to Johto to get the Poke Flute function on the Poke Gear. And the reason I hadn't done that before is because there was no indication that it would be necessary or that it existed. But regardless, it actually wasn't all that difficult or even time consuming to get. And as I said, it wasn't that difficult or time consuming. And I knew exactly where it was and had no trouble finding it. Anyway, we do get it, and after finding the right setting on the radio, we wake up the Snorlax and end up catching it because I did not feel like PP stalling rest. There's enough trainer Pokemon where we do that on. Also, catching the Snorlax had the added unintended benefit of giving Babu the leftovers item, which is a super convenient way of healing. You get a little bit back each turn with or without each seed. Now, Brock would not have been all that difficult without the leftovers, but, having it was nice anyway, and it will actually probably be essential later on. So we're not pulling anything else, so there's no reason not to use leftovers, and before too long, we've added the Boulder badge to our collection of gym badges. Although Brock is slightly more difficult than he normally is, although that's to be expected at this point. Fair's fair. So with that in hand and only 2 badges left, we make our way down to Cinnabar Island expecting to challenge Blaine, only to find that everything has been destroyed and the island is completely barren. Blue is hanging around and tells us about his brief time as champion, how he lost to Red, and how a volcano destroyed the island. Which, what volcano? I don't see any volcanoes anywhere around here. Anyway, he gives an indication of him being a gym leader now, and so we'll probably be seeing him later. And after we finally check this sign, we notice that this gym has been relocated to the Seafoam Islands. So we make our way over there and we can finally challenge Blaine. Now, in theory, this should be a difficult gym battle. One of the most difficult. We do have a fire weakness, so Price should be the only one that's more difficult than this, which I guess he probably is, but we end up being able to defeat Blaine relatively easily. He sets up Sunlight, which is probably to increase the power of his fire-type moves, but it also increases the power of our Synthesis. And we end up not even having to dip into our bag in order to win this battle, So now there's only one badge left to collect in Kanto. Blue is interesting as a gym leader because he does not have a type specialty like all of the others. He has a type diverse team. In theory, this gives him a slight edge over most of the others, since we can't just repair a team that hard counters his. You know, if you're going into the rock gym, you collect grass Pokemon along the way. If you're walking into a water gym, you use those same grass Pokemon. You can't do that with Blue. But despite that, Babu is able to pull through. And he convinced all of his Pokemon to join her in the way of peace. It takes some convincing, and a few of them are hard-headed as a rock, but Babu's conviction is powerful enough that that doesn't actually matter. Not even the most aggressive Pokemon can stand up to Babu's peacefulness. And in the end, even a coconut head will admit that Babu has the grace and the conviction to carry out her mission. And we have 16 badges now in our collection. So now we can make our way up to Mount Silver. Or not. Turns out we have to go talk to Professor Oak first, which is not indicated in the game. I mean, a little bit of direction would be nice. Like let us, don't tell us exactly, but anyway. Right away, Red makes it clear that this battle will be a lot more difficult than any other up to this point. Pikachu dealt a ridiculous amount of damage right off the bat. But not enough to deter Babu. And in the end, Pikachu relents. Charizard follows up. And after connecting with Leech Seed, we are forced to heal every turn. It would have been better to go for Toxic instead of Leech Seed, but hindsight. This thing can kill us with a single crit, but it doesn't get any, and in the end, it concedes victory to Babu. And when it does, Espeon gives us a lot less trouble. We do still have to heal before we can seed or poison, but we can survive long enough to do so. And Espeon concedes to Babu, which gives way to Snorlax, which, of course, has rest. Despite that, Babu goes for the Leech Seed and the Toxic, and even though Snorlax's rest can heal the poison, it cannot heal the Leech Seed. And that alone gives Babu an advantage. And it is through that advantage that Babu is able to convince this Snorlax to join her side and turn away from this path of violence. Which brings us to Venusaur, a grass poison type, which is immune to both Leech Seed and Toxic. Luckily, none of its moves have very many PP. Solar Beam is its only damaging move, and it soon enough goes down to Struggle Recoil. And that just left Blastoise. And all we had to do now was dodge a few blizzards, which Babu has no trouble doing. And after Red disappears from the mountain, Babu has officially spread peace not only to Johto, but also to Kanto. And it only took 103 hours. 103 hours! Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.